911. Do you need...
Hello, please. Help me. I'm Amanda Berry.
You need police, fire, or ambulance?
I need police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now.
Okay, and what's your address?
2207 Seymour Avenue.
2207 Seymour. Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
Huh?
Looks like you're calling me from 2210.
I can't hear you.
It looks like you were calling me from 2210 Seymour.
Yeah, I'm across the street. I'm using the phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors. Talk to the police when they get there.
Okay.
And we are live again. This is the Solvable Mysteries Podcast, episode number 43. My name is Juras. I'm joined by my co-host, Glenn Highcove, and we're going to be talking about a very crazy case today. How are you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, doing okay. I had a kind of a busy week, but a productive one, and I think I'm ready to take out some frustrations on a devious individual, which I think is what we're talking about today.
Dead giveaway. Dead giveaway. My neighbors got big testicles because we see this dude every day. We eat ribs with this dude, but we didn't have a clue that girl was in that house. She said, please help me get out. So this is Ariel Castro right here. And I don't know, man. I feel like this has to be the craziest, the craziest and the most messed up like case that we've looked at. In terms of like, I don't know, man. For me personally, this is the most messed up case out of all of our like library that we have done. This has to be it. Even though, like, you know, Flight 370, Malaysia Airlines, stay away from Malaysia Airlines, by the way, was a lot of people died, you know, like a lot more people died. And in this case, no one even actually died. But I feel like just the manner of this case, you know, like it just, I don't know, man. Looking into it, it just gives you a bad feeling, you know. So we're talking about the Ariel Castro Kidnappings, and yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not even gonna ask you if you've heard about this case, because, you know, like my parents know about this case. And everybody. And we're in Eastern Europe, Lithuania, and then people know about this dude. So I don't know, man. Do you remember what you were doing when the news were showing what was happening? Because I'm sure you know about this case.
Yeah, I feel like this was because it was so big in the news cycle, and it was weird too because I feel like I'll have to look at what the other case was. I feel like there was another case that was real similar to this that had also, like, you know, some degenerate narcissist like this kidnapping a lady and keeping her like in his backyard or something. Wasn't there another case that was really similar to this? Sometimes I get them a little bit confused.
I feel like there was, yeah. I definitely think there was something like that. I don't know the names, but I'm sure there was something like that, yeah.
Maybe that's a future show, yeah. Because it feels like, I guess that's it's kind of confusing. Because sometimes I feel like I conflate the two because they both. And like it'll be something interesting to talk about at the end about this, or how common we think this is and where this comes from. But it was.
By the way, with the audio, man, you sort of need to increase the audio stuff because I was hearing some static. Right. So as you were saying, wait, what were you saying? Because I was like looking at the audio, I guess quality stats.
I think it was the background, huh? I mean, I feel like there was just like a couple of these at once. So sometimes I get them conflated and confused about who was who. But then after I went digging again, it was like, oh yeah, this was the guy that had 3 people locked up in his house, and it's just, I mean, you know, I think to your point with the intro, it's like if you kind of add up the years of the three people that he had, locked up in his house, it does kind of add up to like one person's lifetime.
Pretty much, right?
So in a way, he kind of killed a part of their lives.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Like
Yeah.
he killed something inside of those three women. Like you don't go back to being a normal person after that. But actually, the women involved here turned out to be like really, like fairly normal, which is, I guess, also another thing that baffles me, that the situation got handled probably as good as it could possibly get handled. Wouldn't you agree? Because this thing where this dude, we'll talk about it a little bit later on the show, but he was fairly suicidal. There were like a few, I guess, pieces of evidence that even during his like years of holding essentially the women prisoners, he was suicidal back then. So this guy was unstable psychologically from day one, and like the situation could have ended a lot worse, because he apparently had like shotguns also in the house or something like that.
Oh wow, yeah. And then imagine if he'd like killed himself and not let out the ladies, and they had no way of getting out.
Right. I mean,
yeah, they would have like starved to death or something in there.
I mean, there was this one incident where after he had kidnapped all of the three women, shortly after that, I believe it was like a year after he had all of them locked up in the house already, he was pulled over by the police officer because he was driving to the gas station with something wrong with his. He was on a motorcycle, and something was wrong with the bike's, I guess, license plate, and the police officer would probably on a regular basis detain him and put him like, I don't know, man, in county jail or something like that, or he probably would not even. But the thing is, they would not go searching throughout his house, so they would have detained him, but the women would stay there locked up with no one to feed them. So there were like times where this could have just not been what it was. It could have been like a whole different story. Just one wrong move and everything like turns out super bad. So I don't know, it almost feel like someone was looking after those girls, because to survive 10 years with this guy, it's something. So right, let's bring it back to the beginnings, I guess, to the introduction of Ariel Castro. So I have in the notes here, he was actually born in Puerto Rico in Dewey, Yauco. I probably butchered this name, right? Maybe you have a better input on what it's called, because you have like the links with the Caribbean and all that.
Yauco sounds about right. Yeah, Yauco, maybe.
It looks amazing, by the way. This scenery looks great. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah.
It's probably, as you've mentioned to me like prior to recording, that Caribbean is fairly impoverished, so it probably has a hint of that.
It's usually pretty hot and humid, but definitely great scenery, and I mean, Puerto Rico is supposed to be beautiful. It's just remote and was fairly dependent on agriculture, which is kind of the story of the entire Caribbean and south part of the United States, and because of that, it's sort of limited ways for those economies to make money.
But there's a way that Puerto Ricans can actually move to the United States, because Puerto Rico is somehow a part of the United States. It's something like that, something pretty strange.
Yep.
I always found it strange.
They're not a state, but they're a territory. Sometimes people argue they should be like the 51st state.
Yeah.
So to your point, they are United States citizens.
Oh, so it's like, but the USA just took over Puerto Rico, or was like, this is gonna be ours now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember if it was from the Spanish-American War or before that, but it's ours.
Okay. So after growing up, I'm not sure how old was he, Ariel Castro, when he moved out of Puerto Rico, but he moved to the United States, I believe, with his mother, because back in Puerto Rico, his mother and his father had a divorce. Now his father moved to US, I believe, a little bit prior to them, and then they moved, him and his mother moved to Puerto Rico as well. And I feel like a whole bunch of family members, because he had brothers that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. They moved to Puerto Rico. They moved from Puerto Rico. Firstly, they moved to Pennsylvania, a city named Reading, Pennsylvania. But then later, after a while, they moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where Castro's father and also other family members were living. So Castro actually had 9 siblings, and he also had graduated from Cleveland's Lincoln West High School in 1979. So he had grown up in the United States, like mainland, pretty much, right? That's pretty fair to say, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like he spent most of his life on the mainland U.S. That's fair.
Right. Then, shortly after he graduated, I assume, he had met his girlfriend, Grimilda Figueroa. I hope I pronounced that correct.
Yep.
When his family moved into a house across the street, he met this girl, and it happened in the 1980s. Oh, so I assume he was in school still back then. Maybe he was not sure. They lived with, I guess, both sets of parents, but moved into their own home at 2207 Seymour Avenue, which is now pretty much an I don't want to say an iconic place, but it's a lot of people have been there just to check it out, you know.
Infamous, let's say.
Infamous, yeah, you have the better wording right there. So I don't know, man, it seemed weird that him and Grimilda Figueroa, his wife, they lived with both sets of parents. So I don't know how that worked out. Maybe, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing to happen, but they actually did move to their own home shortly. So I think I have their home somewhere, right? So this is the house. I'm not sure if they bought a house, but obviously when it was happening, back when they first bought it, it didn't have that fence over it. I think the fence was built after everything. Yeah, I'm sure that was the case. The fence got built after everything went down, essentially, when everyone found out what was happening. But I'm pretty sure the windows stayed fairly similar, you know? The house was pretty much locked up, like shut. There were no entries inside the house. It was literally like a prison almost. So in the neighborhood, Ariel was known as a stand-up guy, essentially. All the neighbors were like, oh, he was a really cool guy. We could never even assume that he could have kidnapped 3 women and held them captive for 10 years, which is, I'm gonna probably dig at the neighbors somewhere in the show, because the neighbors were like, I don't know, man. All I'm gonna say is that I would not want to live in this neighborhood with those people, because, I mean, come on, man. But the thing is, he wasn't really that nice of a guy. He actually beat his wife quite often. I don't know, man. You want to take it away about, like, their relationship?
Yeah, so that I definitely gonna come back to this a couple times in the whole episode, because he was quite brutal to his wife. I wish I was trying to find if there was more about this, but even in all the profiles about him, I guess because he didn't kill anybody, there wasn't a super lot of research into him. Then if he'd been like a serial killer, that's when everybody does those exhaustive studies of like, what was her childhood like and this and that. But it makes you wonder if he grew up in a household, where there was, or in a family where domestic violence was common, because, he was just over the top brutal. I mean, the list of injuries to her. Let's see. Let me just go down the laundry list of what is claimed that he did, and and which the justice system really doesn't seem to have done a super great job tracking down. Maybe because it was hard to get her to testify against him. I'm not sure. So maybe that's the qualifier there.
I
But
want to quickly jump in here. He was charged for, I guess, domestic violence against his wife, but then I definitely don't like credit me on this thing. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I've read somewhere that she dropped the case, and she only got the custody when they divorced. She only got the custody of the 4 children, but she did not pursue the domestic abuse. I guess, I don't know, lawsuits against him. She just got the custody and said, like, I'm never gonna, like, talk to you again, and that was that, you know.
Yeah, it's so strange too, because well, 2 things. So I mean, first, just looking at the injuries, says here that he beat her and broke her nose, her ribs, her arms, and on top of all that, I think he also knocked out some teeth. Because it says here he threw her down a flight of stairs, cracking her skull.
Oh my God!
It says he caused a blood clot on her brain that eventually turned into not a cancerous tumor, but like a so-called benign tumor. It wasn't so benign because it eventually killed her. It caused complications, which, like, once again, it's like, I don't understand. If you do something to if you injure somebody in a way that they die from the injury later, sometimes you can actually be charged for murder for that. So you know what I mean? You'll do something to somebody.
I almost feel like you should, man. You know, like, have some sort of I don't know, man. Like, you should be charged at least for something, you know, like not just like, oh, it happened back then, and now, you know, this person died because I smashed, you know, her head in, and now you just, like, because, you know, the funny thing is, definitely not the funny thing is, but like just the timing was quite crazy here, because she died 1 year prior to his whole charade getting exposed with the kidnappings. So, right. Oh my God! Like, was it not worth it to take another look at Ariel Castro at that point? Did he really have to, like, completely mess up with leave the doors unlocked for one of his prisoners for this thing to blow? You know, because man, like, the police force and the neighborhood, it's like, what are you guys doing? You know?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, you know, once again, I mean, it's probably not super politically correct to say, but it seems like in some areas, in some neighborhoods, and some communities, this must just happen a lot, where there's just so much domestic violence and so much just like domestic chaos and abuse and other things going on, that it gets lost in the ocean of just depravity that goes on. So I think that's what the cops would turn around and tell us. But yeah, they're like, oh, like, well, you know, like you said, I mean, who else? If his neighbors think he was some normal guy, well, what's going on in their houses too? So that's the thing that makes you wonder, you know. But yeah, it doesn't happen everywhere, but so, it seems to be concentrated, certainly. So yeah, in his case, I mean, yeah, besides these like massive injuries that he inflicted on his wife, you know, it also says here that, you know, even after she left him, he continued to threaten and attack her, and he supposedly had been, like, abducting their kids. So there was, like, child custody disputes, I guess, about, you know, and he had restraining orders, and unfortunately, those restraining orders are infamous here for being, like, not that useful. I mean, they're useful to a point, but, like, a restraining order doesn't really keep somebody from, like, finding you and shooting you, which happens a lot. Like, somebody will get a restraining order against their abusive ex-husband, and then he'll show up with a gun and blow them away. And it's like, well, that restraining order didn't really do anything, other than just give a false sense of security. So, yeah, I think so. That's one of the bones I got to pick is for people later on, they're like, oh, he seems so normal and this and that, and his family members like saying, oh, well, we didn't know, and who would have thought? Yeah, well, I mean, where were his brothers and sisters, all these siblings? Where were they when this was going on? If they were living in two different parents' houses, I don't imagine that when they moved into their house was the first time he started beating the crap out of his wife. I can only think that it makes you wonder in these families. I'm just going to crap all over his family for a while. It makes you wonder if, what kind of low level or high level domestic abuse was going on in these households in his family. Where did he learn how to act like this?
Right. Maybe back in Puerto Rico, because
or when they moved, or maybe that's why his parents got divorced. Makes you wonder what happened there. Yeah. So I wish we had more detail, because if he had been a serial killer, like, just ironically, I watched something about Son of Sam before I did some of the research on this. Yes. Oh, they have plenty of details on Son of Sam. They have all kinds of stuff about his childhood, and he was never married. He didn't even have a relationship really with anybody. He just blew away a bunch of people. But anyway, so yeah, that's the one thing. So yeah, Figueroa finally, 1996, moves out and gets custody of her children. And it's interesting because, once again, this is something that did turn up when I didn't see it in the main news things, but
okay,
it seems like there's two theories here.
Yes.
Either it's because she marries some guy who I think his name is like Lobos or something.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know these details.
So her new husband, all of a sudden the cops start making all these investigations about her new husband, that he supposedly is molesting or like digitally penetrating the children, the daughters. There's all these complaints.
Wait, what? Digitally?
Well, yeah,
penetrating? What does that mean?
Yes, sticking fingers into people. In their private parts.
That's called digitally.
Yeah, because your finger is a digit. Yeah, I know. It sounds like a computer thing, but no, it's actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
God damn.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. So here's the thing. And interestingly, it seems like some amount, if not all, of these accusations are coming from Castro himself. So it sounds like he's kind of being malicious.
Oh my God.
And telling both the FBI and the cops, getting the cops to keep investigating her new husband, though supposedly the children also made the accusations. And then there was a whole back and forth. I wasn't really sure. It looked like at some point he might have actually been convicted on some of this, but once again, it's hard to tell if Castro was manipulating his own children when he would see them to make these accusations. It was strange because he didn't have his children over to his own house that much, so I guess he would see them at their house or something. But
yes.
Once again, when you look later at how he's sort of a semi-charismatic, manipulative, narcissistic person, I would not put it past him to have waged this whole propaganda war of lies against his wife's new husband. Regardless, whatever the reason, it was interesting because, meanwhile, the Lobos guy is like, dude, it's not me. This guy's a monster. You need to investigate him. And interestingly, the cops and the FBI later, when they started coming to him about some of these disappearances that happened, because he even got investigated for the kidnappings that happened.
Yeah.
The new husband. So the new husband even got investigated for that.
Oh my God! Wait, what?
Yeah. He was, so the FBI would, because kidnapping starts to fall into the FBI's territory.
Yes, yeah.
So they're like, hey, because they all still lived in the same neighborhood, and that these women that got kidnapped were his kids' friends. So they're coming to this new husband, Lobos, and they're like, hey, what's going on? It seems like all these people your kids know, and maybe it's you because you have all these accusations against you and you seem to be some kind of creep. And he's like, dude, it's not me. It's this jerk over here who keeps telling you to come investigate me. Anyway, yeah, so that was interesting. There's never really been any comment from the FBI about that part of it.
Whoa.
It's freaking frustrating. So that's one thing. The other thing, though, I'll say, just devil's advocate, maybe this wife maybe Figueroa has kind of a habit of picking like people that are abusers or losers. So she might be not so great at picking domestic partners, which isn't to say she deserved anything. She didn't. No one deserves abuse, but it is not uncommon for someone that is used to abuse, especially if maybe she was abused in her own family, because
Yeah.
where were they when all this was going on? But
Oh yeah,
anyway,
where are these guys?
yeah. Where's her brother or sister or father or mother when her husband's beating the crap out of her multiple times? You'd think they would get involved, but I don't know what happened there. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone that picked one loser to marry and have kids with picked a second loser to have marry, and
Yeah, I
bring
don't
into
know.
her life. So
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I don't know a lot
Now that
about the Lobos guy because yeah,
now that I've dragged everybody's family through the dirt for a while,
I think
yeah.
we can move along, right? Okay, the next part. Right. So if we're gonna be following along the script, the last part that we, I guess, need to mention about Ariel Castro. Well, okay, I didn't really plan on later on the show to talk anywhere about his personal hobbies and things like that. So he was a bass player, he was a musician, and he was actually a very talented musician. He was, from what I've gathered, an exceptional bass player, and basically in the local circuits of like musicians and bands in the Cleveland, Ohio area, he was known as maybe the top 3 bass guitarist or whatever in the whole city, almost in the whole Ohio. So all of the, I guess, his musician friends, because he was playing in a band, stated that he was amazing at it and that he had a real talent for music. And I don't know, I don't want to praise this guy too much right here for obvious reasons, but it seemed that he had a real talent for music, and just seemed like he could have probably focused more on the music part rather than causing chaos to everyone he knew. Maybe that would have turned out a lot better for him. So he was playing in bands, but I'm not sure if he was getting rich off of that, because he was a school bus driver during the day, and during the night he would play in like local pubs, or I don't know how you call them in America, maybe like bars and clubs like that. So he would play in there with his other band members, and the band members did state that he was a closed person. Like, he would never talk about his personal life, because he would play like in those clubs when he had all of the victims chained up in his house. He would just lock up the house and just go and play in the bands, so in the clubs with the band members. And the band members said that he was a closed person, he was private, he would never talk about his personal life. And I guess the band members just wrote it off as maybe he's just a private person, and I don't wanna get him on his bad side, so I'm just not gonna ask him any questions. Also, he was really good at that bass, so people were like, we definitely don't want to lose him from our band, because he makes, I guess, the overall quality of the music we play a lot higher. So I guess that was that. But they did state this one interesting fact, that he would flirt with women in these clubs. And Ariel Castro, well, this is him close to the end of his life. So he's not like the best looking dude ever, I'm sure you would agree with me, but he would flirt with these women, and when he would get rejected, he would sort of try to like force them to, like, I don't know, like talk to him or dance with him, like almost like would grab them and stuff like that. So I guess he was even the band members knew that he was a bit of an odd character, but I guess he didn't do anything too extreme. So they were like, maybe he's a little bit of an oddball, but he was. I think a lot of people could have just did a little bit more digging into this man, and they would have unleashed, his true identity. But I guess no one really bothered to do that, because I don't know, man. Maybe they're really relaxed there in Cleveland, Ohio, or something like that. So I think the background part is pretty much over, and let's move into the people whose lives he pretty much hijacked for a decade. You know what I'm saying? So we should begin with Michelle Knight, the first victim who got kidnapped by this man right here. Let me find a picture of Michelle Knight. So this is Michelle back when she was really young. I think she was a teenager here, and when she was abducted, she was 21 years of age. I sort of believe that this was when she was even younger than that. This picture was taken, and Michelle...
That looks like a high school photo. Like
yeah.
a high school yearbook photo, yeah.
Right. And Michelle actually, I feel like she may have had the worst like life out of all of the victims here, because she had a really bad she had like a really bad past even before she got kidnapped. So she was allegedly gang raped by some men, and there's not a lot of details in this, and she gave birth to a son, and then she lost custody of her son. So she lost custody of her son shortly before she got kidnapped by Ariel Castro. So, you know, this was a really, really messed up like life. Like her her transition into adulthood was probably as bad as it could get for anyone, you know. So I'm reading the script here. She disappeared on the 23rd of August in 2002. She was leaving her cousin's house. She was 21 years old at the time. On the day of her disappearance, she was scheduled to appear in court for a child custody case involving her son Joey, who was in the custody of the state at that time. So I guess this also played a part why actually Michelle Knight was sort of forgotten about, even by her like family members and the police, I guess officers, and like the whole police department in Cleveland, Ohio, because 15 months after she disappeared, she was actually taken off the missing persons records. Like, she was still missing, but she was not in the main database because she was an adult at the time, 21 years of age, and she disappeared on the day when she had a, I guess, like court hearing regarding the custody of her son. So people were thinking that maybe she knew that she was gonna lose the custody or like not get back the son's custody, and they thought that she just ran away, you know. She said to everyone that, you know, you can all like, I don't know, go to hell, and I'm just gonna skip towns, because she did have a massive fight with her mother also prior to disappearing. So people just thought that she sort of, you know, like the circumstances were such that it would not seem completely out of the ordinary for someone to just cut off all ties, you know. And the police had their hands tied a little bit here because she was 21 years of age, so you can't really, you know, you could legally disappear. There is no issue with that, right? You could just disappear whenever you want.
I mean, from a practical point of view, it's true. The one thing I do wonder is, I mean, doesn't the government at least want their taxes out of her or something? But I guess maybe they figured someone maybe they figured someone with no income has no taxes to pay, and maybe the government
Would they actually go and look for someone just for the taxes?
I mean, if she was actually showing income, like in a bank or something, at some point they might eventually come after her. But yeah, I mean, if she wasn't even
right,
I think that it's kind of interesting. I guess once again, there's like just too many as a community with too many problems, maybe, where like not even a social worker is noticing, like, hey, this person's not on welfare or food stamps, and where are they? And you know, they had this child, and we just took their child away. It's pretty crazy.
So, you know, the crazy part about Michelle Knight's kidnapping, as opposed to the other two victims, there's not that much detail of how she got kidnapped. Maybe I didn't look that hard, but I couldn't really, because the other two victims, there's sort of like a whole backstory of how the kidnapping went down, but for Michelle Knight there wasn't. That, like, I just couldn't find the details, or maybe they were pretty hard to find.
I
Okay.
think it was. I mean, from what I understand from the back research I did when I was trying to find this other info about him,
Yes.
it sounded like it was kind of a similar scenario where once again it was somebody that knew one of his kids, so they knew him as, I guess, one of the daughters. I think it was like a different daughter for each one of these girls, one of these women. So, you know my daughter X, and then, oh yeah, you need a ride home. And it seems like maybe, I was going to say, especially given how she was kind of an at-risk person,
Right.
sort of marginalized, not taken seriously by even her own parents or grandparents,
Yeah.
it seems like. Maybe she seemed like the easiest target to him, where he's like, you know what? This person living here on the fringes, the edges of
okay.
society, you know what I mean? Like, who's going to miss her?
Oh.
And if that was so, I guess he was right, because he was like, well, here's this person. And then, I mean, the thing is though, for his trouble, it turns out that she was actually the least cooperative. And I guess, I mean, not that anybody should be cooperative in that scenario. And this is not to say that this is not putting down Michelle. It's really kind of commending her for, I guess, putting up a good front in the face of very adverse circumstances and life-threatening circumstances. But apparently she kind of fought him tooth and nail the entire time. Like, she was never a good prisoner with him. She was always, always defiant, always, just not cooperative with him. I think maybe that was part of the reason why he felt like he needed to abduct more than one person, because it wasn't, the reality was not living up to whatever fantasy or twisted plan he had, life plan for what this was going to get him.
Yeah, maybe that's why he decided to kidnap two more victims. So the second victim that he kidnapped, so this is basically her. Now, one thing before we move to the second victim, the first thing here is that, I want to definitely be sensitive to this Michelle here, but like, she was quite short. I didn't really realize before I saw pictures next her standing next to Dr. Phil. I'm not sure how tall Dr. Phil is, but I would assume that Dr. Phil is your average man, and
I think he might be a big one. Let me while you keep going. I'm going to look up his height. I think he might be like 6'4".
Right. So, okay. So he's, I think he has that stature of being a big man as well. But like, to everyone,
6'3".
For everyone who is listening to this podcast, not on YouTube, by the way, if you want to see the visuals, just jump on our YouTube page, Solvable Mysteries Podcast. You could actually see that she was like really quite short, and I read somewhere that she was 4'1" in height, so that's really short. And I think it's worthy to mention here, because it would probably make it very, very difficult for someone of her stature to fight off, Ariel Castro, who was 180 pounds, 5'8", something like that. So he had almost like 2 feet on this woman, and probably like 100 pounds or even more. So that just gives better context into the whole situation. Also, last thing I want to mention about Michelle, that she was the focus of very few tips. Some have criticized her removal from the National Crime Information Center database. This happened 15 months after she disappeared, so she was largely unknown prior to her rescue. So as I've mentioned before, it seems that a lot of investigative, work has sort of stopped in regards of trying to find her. But it didn't stop for the second victim, and the second victim is Amanda Berry. So this name is synonymous, given the I guess now infamous 911 call where she stated her name. So Amanda Berry had disappeared on April 21st in 2003, so the next year, the day before her 17th birthday. So that's the timing of these disappearances are crazy. I'm not sure if Ariel Castro was definitely not planning these I guess dates, but it just happened to happen for Michelle Knight on the same day when her court hearing was due, and Amanda Berry was kidnapped like one day before her birthday. So that's a terrible birthday surprise right there. She was last heard from around 8 p.m. when she called her sister to tell her that she was getting a ride home from her job at a Burger King at West 110th Street and Lauren Avenue. So basically the FBI initially considered her a runaway until a week after her disappearance, when an unidentified male user used her cell phone to call her mother, and this male stated, "I have Amanda, she's fine, and we will be coming home in a couple of days." So at this time, the FBI still were developing the technology to pinpoint the call's location, but they couldn't quite pinpoint the location, but they had like a radius. So it was a little bit of a strange situation where they didn't have like the exact place where the call was from. They had like the radius, but they still couldn't figure out where it was. The call was made, so it was something right there. Also have here in the notes that Berry was featured in a 2004 segment of Fox's America's Most Wanted, and I actually have this America's Most Wanted, so let us just play this clip right here, because actually this America's Most Wanted episode linked up the second victim, Amanda Berry, to the third victim that we're going to be talking about soon. So I think that's going to be a perfect transition, right? So let's just play it for a few seconds. I mean, maybe even entirety, we'll see. I'm just gonna play it right now.
This is Tom Morris with one of our most mysterious missing child cases. It started at this Cleveland middle school 1 year ago today. 14-year-old Gina DeJeseus left school and started walking down this busy Cleveland street. She never made it home. Gina vanished in broad daylight.
When I came home and I got on the phone, and from 4 o'clock I started calling friends after friends. They said they did not see her.
I talked to the last person who did see Gina that day, her best friend and classmate, Ariel Castro. The two girls were walking home together, hoping to spend the rest of the afternoon at Gina's house.
I decided to call my mom and ask her, and so she gave me 50 cents to call my mom, and so my mom said no, that I can't go over her house. And so I told her I couldn't, and she said, well, okay, I'll talk to you later, and she just walked.
Normally, Gina would have taken the bus, but after she gave Ariel 50 cents for the payphone, she didn't have enough money left for bus fare, so she headed home on foot.
Police canines tracked Gina's scent from the payphone at the corner, right down the street, halfway up the block, to this Snow Street sign right here. And this is where the trail went cold.
The disappearance of Gina DeJeseus on busy Lorraine Avenue has sent a familiar chill through this Cleveland community.
Okay, go Burger King.
The cops working to bring her home are the same cops trying to solve the disappearance of another teenage girl, almost exactly a year earlier and just a few blocks away. Amanda Berry vanished on April 21st, 2003, as she walked home from her job at this fast food restaurant.
And when she disappeared, which direction was she walking?
She was last observed to be walking northbound on West 110th, which is a street right here.
Two attractive teenage girls. They disappear in similar circumstances, along the same busy avenue. What does it mean?
A lot of the local people around here, are talking about it as well, and how they're getting a little bit scared for their children as well.
Whether or not these cases are connected, police and the families of these two girls need your help. Gina DeJeseus was last seen wearing a tan shirt with a light blue jacket and black pants. Amanda Berry has slick, sandy blonde hair and multiple piercings in each ear. If you have any information about either of these missing children, please give our hotline a call right now at 1-800-PRIME-TV.
Yeah, what's with the James Bond music? I don't know, man. It was a weird time back in 2004. So we're gonna transition to the next person on, I guess, the third victim. Well, I guess the most wanted episode started off with this person. So it was Gina DeJeseus. By the way, this is some other person we're gonna talk about later on. This is Gina right here, and yeah, essentially the wild part on I'm not sure if you connected the dots, but actually the most wanted episode showed Ariel Castro's daughter, and she was filmed in 2004, and she was stating that she's the last person who saw Gina DeJeseus. So Ariel Castro, the man who kidnapped all of these women, his daughter was on TV in 2004, I believe, talking about how she's the last person who saw Gina DeJeseus. How crazy is that, man?
Yeah, I mean, that was the frustrating part, I think, especially with the second husband of Figueroa, was like the daughters were the link to all these women. The daughter, and especially afterwards.
We can see on the visuals, by the way, on the right side. This is Castro's daughter right here on the right side, and on the left side we have Gina DeJesus. So I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I just wanted to make it clear for the people who are on YouTube right now, not actually watching the episode. So
yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating because, I mean, like look as close as they are in that picture. That's how close the cops were and the FBI to cracking this case. I mean, these big glaring arrows like, hey, you should really, it's so strange that all these three, I guess a bunch of things, like the phone call where it kind of triangulates it in an area, and then you've got these three ladies all disappeared from the same community. They all know this same guy's three kids, and who do they go after? Not the guy that beat the crap out of his wife and gave her a brain tumor. No, let's go after the new husband and question him. So that, I mean, it's just amazing. So meanwhile, they're all locked up in this house, with him, just like some kind of prison.
And the crazy part is that he actually, he had to figure out a way to keep them somehow to provide some sort of entertainment, because if you don't do that, then they would become like animals. You have to do something, for entertainment for your captives. So he gave them a black and white television, and the most messed up part is that they were watching these documentaries on them in the basement, in this little black and white TV. Picture the scene, man. Jeez.
I mean, you couldn't even get them a color TV. This guy's horrible. I mean, where do you even find a black and white TV? You
2004, man. 2004, 2005.
I don't know. I feel like in 2005 you would have had to go to like an antique store for that. Right. I mean, it's just hilarious. Like, did he find it in like the 75% off shelf in Radio Shack?
He did like the bare minimum for these women.
Does the torture never stop? They can't even get them a decent, TV at that point. Yeah. So, I mean, it was interesting when I was looking at one of the research pieces was showing kind of like the chains and stuff that he would, because I was, like my daughter was asking me when we were doing research on this, she was like, well, like who did the grocery shopping and stuff? Like, how did this all work? And as I understand it, he must have taken some, and also when he would go out and play his music, at night, because he seemed to feel fine. about leaving these three people that could, I mean, you leave somebody alone for a while in a house that isn't built out of like steel, you would figure they might find a way to get out, but it looks like he put some forethought into this in terms of like having not just a way to keep them chained up when he was gone, but even give them a way to move around the house while still chained up, I guess. Like he had these weird support bars and things
Right,
to
so
allow
this
them
is
to,
one of the chain. This is one of the chain. I have a few of these images, and the chains look like, man, they look like they're from the 16th century. These things look, oh man, just the scenes are grim. The scenes are really grim, man, just to say the least.
I saw something too with like some kind of support bars that were like bolted to the ceiling. It reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen the old comedy 9 to 5. It's like a 80s.
Don't think I have.
Yeah, it's probably I wouldn't imagine you have, but it was sort of a famous movie from the 80s that had like Dolly Parton and Jane Fonda in it. And in the movie, they basically kidnap their own boss and kind of keep him all chained up like this. Like they come up with like a little system to kind of keep him, like to give him the ability to go to the bathroom by himself and stuff, but to still be able to like kind of reel them in if they need to in an emergency. That's what it kind of reminded me of when I looked at this. I was like,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get into the I guess the layout of the house shortly. Actually, right now I'm looking at the notes, and okay, the last thing that we have to mention here before we move forward into like the whole situation, how they were held captive and what the inside of the house looked like. They were, you said that they were so close, right? They were so close to figuring who this guy was. Well, look at this. This is how he looked at around that time. So this is Ariel's picture right here. He looks, he looked a little bit odd, but bass players, it was probably like the cap. Seems like a bass player would wear that, the turtleneck. Is that like a golden like chain on top of the turtleneck? Like it was a weird look, but I guess it
looks like
sense.
such a douche. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bass, but I could sort of see that this is like a bass player's look or something like that. But this is the sketch that they came up with after Gina was missing. So I'm not sure how they came up with this sketch, who was the witness, who saw what, but this is the sketch. And this is the dude. So, oh my god, like someone just connect the dots, please.
Yeah.
Why are you still not connecting the dots? The sketch looks exactly the same. Like you could, and also now I'm getting questions in my head like, who was the witness? Because how could you provide such an accurate sketch? Because most of the cases when they like do the sketches for the actual suspects, and when they catch the guy who did it, the sketches look nothing like the dude, like it looks nothing like the perpetrator. The sketches are all over the place, and I just look at them, but usually they look nothing like the actual a person who's committing the crimes. But in this case, the sketch looks like really similar. Like even the beard, someone even made like the beard like he had that little goatee below his lower lip. And they actually got it on the sketch as well. So who was the victim? Who was the witness? This is suspicious as hell right now, because how could you make such an accurate sketch? The beard is perfect. The hair is perfect. Even probably the eyebrows. Even the eyebrows are similar. The nose, everything, the ears look the same. So someone made a almost a perfect sketch, like they knew who they were drawing, essentially, So
looks like his ex-wife made the sketch or something.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Or maybe it was that. What was the guy's name? Like the the
Lobos or whatever.
maybe Lobos was making
They're
this.
busy throwing each other under the bus.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man. But like, yeah, I don't. This definitely raises
bus.
questions to me. Like, why? Like at that point when this sketch came out, I feel like this case could have been like over. Like, oh, this guy looks exactly the same. His daughter knows like 77%, like I mean 67% of the victims in this case, because I don't think she knew Michelle. Yeah, let's look inside of this dude's house. Maybe we could find something. Oh, he has his windows bolted. No one has been in his house for the last 10 years. Even his own mother was not in his house, because apparently when his mother would come to visit, he would say, let's just talk on the porch, but you are not allowed to come inside the house. Like, and the mother was like, okay, son, okay, so how is everything, son? Everything's fine. Do you have something for me? Because if you don't, just get out of my property. And the mother was like, okay, son. So yeah, man, I feel like it's just it was right there. I mean, if I was the neighbor, I would have blown this case, you know. So the neighborhood is, well, at least they lost all their money on in terms of like the real estate that they had, because, you know, I'm sure that neighborhood is not the most lucrative neighborhood in Cleveland at this point, right? To own real estate. So that's pretty much it. And we are now gonna move into, I guess, the captivity part. So the captivity was insane. He would molest them, beat them, do all sorts of crazy things to this woman. And we actually have another clip on we have to look in. So this is basically the inside of the house. So just let's look into it.
Inside Ariel Castro's home was made real today in court, even down to a scale model with matching paint. An FBI agent described what was turned into a torture chamber, including the chains that bound Castro's victims.
Those were found in the upstairs bedrooms. That's a chain. It's in the room that Gina DeJeseus and Michelle Knight shared.
Downstairs, Castro even wired the front doors with alarms.
Those are a series of alarm clocks, and they're wired in a makeshift manner to create essentially an alarm system to the house.
This was the only bathroom in the home, but this makeshift commode, rarely emptied, is what his victims were forced to use. And it's up these stairs where they were held captive for 10 years.
This is a view from the landing after the first set of steps as you go up from the first floor. There's a turn, then you go up another set of steps before you reach the second floor. So this is a landing between the first and second floors. At the top of the image is a brown curtain, and the curtain was concealing the landing to the second floor.
At the top, the room where Amanda Berry and her baby daughter were locked inside.
This is a view from the hallway in the second floor of the room that was labeled, I believe it's room I, and that is the room that the investigation showed Amanda Berry and her daughter spent the majority of their time.
And Castro made sure they would never get out.
The door had obviously been modified by the picture here. There's a handle on the outside that's screwed in. It functions to be able to pull the door closed, as there's no doorknob attached.
And there's one more piece of evidence, a .357 Magnum handgun Castro used to play Russian roulette.
Goddamn, he would play Russian roulette with a handgun with these women. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, this was a bad time to be kidnapped. So this is the model of the house. I don't know, man. Any input on your end? Like, what do you think about this house? It looks like, man, it definitely looks like he made it into like a legit Alcatraz prison. He actually even rigged the doors with alarm clocks. If someone was trying to get out, the alarms would ring. So yeah, this was just a crazy house.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, so much effort from this guy to keep them prisoner, and then, like I said, all the other aspects of it that are just like somebody that really seemed to take joy out of controlling and manipulating and exerting power over other people in that way, to have them dependent and helpless, and just a mean, cruel person.
I just want to quickly read some of the stuff here on the infographic. Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus shared a bedroom on the second floor. A thick wooden panel had been screwed into the rooms to block the room's window. A small hole had been cut in the ceiling to provide ventilation. Chains were found in the room as well. So basically, a system of alarms had been attached to the interior of the front door, but no one even questioned it in the neighborhood. Maybe they did, but I don't know, man. Amanda Berry and her daughter, born during captivity, spent most of their time in a larger room on the second floor, not visible in this view of the model. The room's window had been boarded up with wooden closet doors. The doorknob had been removed, and a hole had been cut in the door for ventilation, and I believe also he would cut various slots in the doors so he could give them like food. Also, they were kept on a really messed up diet. He would feed them once a day. With fast food like McDonald's, whatever he would grab from, I guess, the drive-through. Also, there are different sources stating in terms of like the hygiene part of this captivity. Some sources state that it was he allowed them to take a shower twice a week, and some state that it was once a week. So regardless, it's a messed up situation right there. Could you imagine like taking a shower once a week, or maybe like not even taking a shower for like months, which I'm sure he did something like that. So this man was just pure evil right here. And I guess before we move into the part where they escaped, and I guess our final thoughts, and I guess because we still have to as you've talked before recording, you still have some final thoughts on this whole case that you want to express. So let's move through the main details of this captivity. So basically, out of the 3 women, now I could be completely wrong, but I feel like Gina DeJesus, the last victim, was probably she played probably the lesser part in this whole captivity, or at least during the research she was not really mentioned that much. But Michelle Knight and Amanda Berry, they played, I just have this I just came to the conclusion that they played a bigger role in this whole ordeal. So basically, Knight told police that Castro had impregnated her at least 5 times and had induced miscarriages each time through beatings, hitting her with dumbbells, goddamn, punching her and slamming her against the wall. He also starved her. So Knight's grandmother told reporters that she would require facial reconstruction surgery due to the beatings that she endured, and she lost hearing in one ear. At one point, she had a pet dog while in captivity, but Castro killed it by snapping its neck after it bit him while trying to protect Knight. Yeah, so that's a messed up situation. So Knight was impregnated 5 times. Also, the police believes that, and also I believe DeJesus as well believes that she was not impregnated. So the last victim, Gina DeJesus, she was, as I've mentioned before, she probably played the lesser part in this captivity. And actually, on Christmas Day in 2006, Castro allegedly ordered Knight to assist in the birth of Amanda Berry's child. So Amanda was also impregnated, but Castro decided that he wanted Amanda's child to survive, and he actually threatened Michelle Knight if Amanda's child dies, that he would kill Michelle, and I think he would also kill Amanda. So that's mind games right there, because remember, he forcefully induced miscarriages to Michelle Knight, but now Michelle Knight is forced to essentially fight for Amanda Berry's child's life, so that's mind games, don't you think?
Yeah, what like power trip
right.
he was on, and I mean, it makes you wonder. I guess maybe Amanda Berry. Michelle Knight. I guess Michelle Knight is entitled to her medical privacy, but I can only imagine that doing that to her time after time after time wasn't so great for her future chances of having children and for her.
I actually have details. This is a good point that you've brought up. From what I've gathered, and I've actually watched interviews of Michelle Knight when she went on like news stations. She stated, I think it was back in 2015, that she was told by the medical, medical experts that she could never have kids again, and she actually has a husband now, and I believe they tried to have kids. Not sure if they were able to have them. This information is probably out there online, but I definitely didn't want to dig that deep, because this is after the fact, and we should probably definitely we should respect their privacy. So, or should I say privacy or privacy? I don't know how you say it in America, but like we should definitely we should definitely respect that and just keep it moving. So yeah, I don't think she can, man. I don't think she can. Yeah.
So he stole that. Aside from essentially torturing her in many different ways, he stole that from her. So no wonder he gets the sentence he does eventually. But yeah, that's just horrid. And then to force something. Meanwhile, Amanda Berry is not really in a better situation either, because it wasn't like who you have a child with. Is like a very personal. It's like the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life, and she certainly didn't choose him. And now she has, obviously nobody wants to hate their child or have something to not love about their child, but this child is always going to be a reminder of the man who raped her and kept her in captivity for years, right? So that's
right.
It's like a kind of a curse in a way. Not that the child is a curse. The child has no responsibility for them being here. The child didn't have to be born, but the child is always going to be a reminder of the man who did this to her.
Just before we move into like the part where the woman actually escaped Ariel Castro's captivity, one thing that we definitely need to mention about Amanda Berry and her child Jocelyn. I don't know the second name of Jocelyn, and I'll just leave it at that, but her name was Jocelyn. Jocelyn was actually, after this whole thing was over, she went to school, and she actually was more advanced than her age, like the other kids her age. She was reading better than them, and she just, I think, was better like in terms of like schoolwork. So we definitely need to praise Amanda Berry for the effort that she was putting into Jocelyn, because she was teaching her how to write and read, and she was like really trying to prepare her for life outside of essentially Ariel Castro's captivity, because they would like pretend that they are walking in the street, and then they would like pretend that they now just got to school, and then they got back from school, but it was all happening in the same room, so and at some point I'm sure that she was thinking that like she had to have thought about what the future is like for her daughter, you know, like what will happen when she gets older, what when she's a teenager, you know, this can't go on forever. So I think there was a sense for everyone involved, literally everyone involved in this situation, that some sort of changes are bound to happen fairly soon, you know, just because of Jocelyn. So basically Jocelyn changed the whole situation, the whole dynamic in this house. And also I think worth mentioning is that Ariel did not, or allegedly did not, abuse Jocelyn. And from what I've gathered, maybe I'm completely wrong, but from my end of the research, he really loved Jocelyn, and he wanted like the best life for Jocelyn. Obviously, you know, he could have, if he really wanted that, he could have, you know, ended this whole situation. But yeah, he really loved Jocelyn. So that's what I've gathered, you know. Well, it was his daughter, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned about there being a sense that, you know, the situation would end at some point, because one thing was, you know, we mentioned earlier his job was a school bus driver until he got fired. And he got fired because he was a pretty careless person that had done like literally like 3 or 4 stupid things in the course of his employment. He'd made like a dangerous U-turn while kids were on the bus. He once left a special education child on the bus while I went and took lunch for like 2 hours.
Jesus.
Another time he just decided to go take a nap and left the bus unlocked, parked way down the street.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean this guy, he had like a bunch of chances and he blew all of them. And actually, at the time of him being arrested, the house was apparently like under threat of foreclosure. Probably the only reason why it hadn't been foreclosed on yet was because, you know, like I think Cleveland and Ohio in general are kind of an area with a lot of economic issues, because it's the Rust Belt, and that's part of the U.S. that's been sort of deindustrialized and had a lot of people move out of it. But he hadn't paid property taxes in 3 years, so he probably was not making enough money, and he's feeding essentially a family of 5 at that point, right?
Yeah.
So-called family. So there was that going on, and then it was interesting was when they finally did make the bust, there was some kind of note that he'd written that was sort of like a suicide note in case anything had ever happened to him. So supposedly he had always had some kind of exit plan for himself, kind of at any moment. Like you mentioned the shotguns in his house. Yeah, so he apparently may have been I mean, supposedly he may have been suicidal this entire time, and maybe that's why he decided to kind of live life in this way that seemed very. Yeah.
You know what I wonder? I wonder if he had a plan of like, okay, so you've mentioned one plan of like committing suicide and ending it in this way. But do you think he had a very, very sinister plan which involved also guns, but using them on other people, if you know what I mean? Like ending the situation in a darker way, like killing everyone and just like, dodging?
Yeah, I mean, because you ask, because especially given his actions at the end of the trial and the way that he seemed very concerned about his own reputation, and a lot of what he said, which we'll go into shortly, a lot of what he said seemed to be sort of still trying to spin and portray himself like not as a monster, but as some kind of just sick individual who had problems, and that's why he needed pity. And then, you know, just, you know what I mean? So from my perspective, for him to leave them alive would be to leave a bunch of witnesses that could tell everybody of the many horrible things that we all found out, right?
Right. So how did we find out about it? Well, it's a it's a perfect, I guess, link up to the escape and rescue of the kidnapped victims and Jocelyn was born into captivity, so that's even crazier. That was her life. She didn't even know anything about like how like the real life worked, so other than that what Amanda Berry told her. So escape and rescue. So on May 6th of 2013, Amanda Berry was finally able to make contact with Castro neighbors. So how that whole situation went down, I believe Castro mistakenly, for some reason, left Amanda Berry's room unlocked. And also, okay, so that's a mistake, but that's not a critical mistake for Ariel Castro, because on a regular basis they would still be chained up. So okay, the door is unlocked, but at least there's the chain, to prevent Amanda from escaping. But maybe that's why he maybe when he was out of the house, because he was apparently going to see his mother or something like that. I'm pretty sure that was the case. Maybe he remembered that he left the door unlocked, but then he was probably thinking that, oh, whatever, Amanda is still in chains, so that's not gonna do anything for us right now. And the chains were actually unlocked, so he left both the chains not locked and the door of Amanda's room unlocked. So basically everything was unlocked. So Jocelyn, Amanda's daughter, walks into the room, because I assume Jocelyn was allowed the freedom of movement, at least in the house, at least in her later years of captivity. And she moves into Amanda's room and she says, Daddy's car is like gone or something like that, right? So Amanda right then and there knows that this is now or never, literally now or never, because when are you gonna get this chance again? Both the door and the chains are unlocked, and Ariel Castro is not in the house. She runs to like the front door of the house, and there were two doors in this house. So the first door is unlocked, so she opens the door. She's like, yes, I'm finally gonna get out. And no, the main door to the house is bolted shut. But there was a weird situation with the door where she could like actually stick her hand through like a hole in that door and start waving around. And right at that time, some neighbors were outside of Castro's home, or like walking past that house, and I'll just let this guy explain it, what happened next.
Walk me through again what happened this afternoon. You heard screaming.
Heard screaming. I meet my McDonald's. I come outside. I see this girl going nuts, trying to get out of her house. So I go on the porch.
Okay.
I go on the porch, and she says, "Help me get out. I've been in here a long time." So I figured it's a domestic violence dispute. So I open the door, and we can't get in that way because how the door is, it's so much that a body can't fit through, only your hand. So we kick the bottom, and she comes out with the little girl, and she says, "Call 911. My name is Amanda Berry."
Did you know who that was when she said that?
When she told me, it didn't register until I got the call in 911, and then I'm like, I'm calling the 911 for Amanda Berry? I thought this girl was dead. You know what I mean? And she got on the phone and she said, "Yes, this is me." And the detective, Cook, right here, Detective Gregory Cook says, "Charles, do you know who you rescued?" I said.
Now, and when did you see Gina?
About 5.
We're good.
So about 5 minutes after the police got here, see, the girl Amanda told the police, "I ain't just the only ones. It's some more girls up in that house." So they went up there, 30, 40 deep, and when they came out was just astonishing, because I thought they were gonna come up with nothing. I figured, whoever she was, and like I say, my neighbor, you got some big testicles to pull this off, bro, because we see this dude every day. Every day.
How long have you lived here?
I've been here a year.
Okay.
You see where I'm coming from?
Right.
I barbecue with this dude. We eat ribs and whatnot and listen to salsa music. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah. And you had no indication that there was anything going on?
Bro, not a clue that girl was in that house or anybody else was in there against their will, because how he is he just comes out to his backyard, plays with the dogs, tinker with his cars and motorcycles, goes back in the house. So he's somebody that you look away because he's not doing nothing but the average stuff. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's nothing exciting about him. Well, until the day.
What was the reaction on the girls' faces? I can't imagine to see the sunlight, to be around people.
I knew something was wrong when a little pretty white girl ran into a black man's arms. Something is wrong here. Dead giveaway. Dead giveaway.
Charles, thank you very much.
Dead giveaway.
Thank you very much for your time. And
either she homeless or she got problems. That's the only reason why she run to a black man.
Charles, thank you for being there, man. Charles Ramsey, neighbor, heard this.
Right, so, this...
Definitely.
This, it was something right there. So yeah, this guy, Charles, essentially, he rescues Amanda, and then the whole thing blows over. So there was like this whole, there was a short period of time where things could have went really, really wrong for the other two women who were still in captivity, because if Ariel comes back, he realizes, oh crap, Amanda and Jocelyn has escaped, and he's probably thinking, at that point he would be thinking, it's all over. So he would probably get a shotgun, and he would be unstable, so he would probably try to kill himself, but then also maybe before he did that, he would actually go and kill both Gina as well as Michelle. So, but gladly the police actually arrived. We have a clip here. It has no audio on it, so we can definitely talk through it. But I'm just gonna play the clip as the background. Basically, this is how it looked when the police arrived and rescued both Gina and Michelle. So yeah, I don't know, man. You wanna chime in here or something?
Yeah, at least finally the police take it seriously, right? So I guess that's one good thing about the neighborhood, and really credit to the neighbors who, weren't afraid to get involved. And I think that's one thing we can say for America, because sometimes I see videos, especially from China for some reason, where people don't seem to, there's actual reasons for it, but sometimes people don't seem to want to help or get involved when there's like something going on or someone needs help. But
we have that in Lithuania. We have a saying that when our neighbors' house is on fire, we are celebrating and stuff like that, because there's a thing here where Lithuanians, we are really hate our everyone else who we don't know. And I think it is partly true, right? Because when someone next door is having a bad time, when we hear I guess some sort of fighting or something like that, we grab the popcorn.
That's funny. I think for the most part, America is sort of the opposite, where we get very nosy.
Yeah.
So we definitely and depending on depending what's going on, if it's especially egregious, you might see people actually start beating the person who's doing something offensive. And that's I guess that's a trait in a lot of societies too, is people get involved when their sensibilities are offended.
That's a trait of really good stable societies, but Eastern Europe is a little bit different, at least where I'm from.
So there's that going on, and right now you have clips of two of Ariel's brothers, and they were arrested when this first happened, because the authorities were like, how could you not know? You've been over to this guy's house for meals or whatever. How did you not know that there were 3 people locked up, 4 people really, by the time it was done? And they I'm not saying they knew what happened. Clearly the police sort of exonerated them, but still, you know what? This guy seems like a big scumbag. Just looking at him, you get a bad vibe from him. He seems like a very arrogant person. He had undoubtedly beaten the crap out of his wife and injured her in ways that were just outrageous.
Yes.
You know, he had this weird thing going on with even his own mother couldn't come in the house. There are a lot of like red flags with this thing. So I'm not like super fond of his siblings. I don't know what the hell went on with their family. Like before this, I don't know how he learned to treat women and so-called family members and people under his care like this. I just you know, like, who did he learn this from? Did he learn this from his divorced mother and father's relationship? Did he learn this from whatever happened when they moved here to the United States in Pennsylvania? I'm like not, you know, like they can come and complain in their comments or whatever, but like I'm really like, I don't feel like this happened in a vacuum. I feel like this guy learned some of his behavior. This is not excusing him. So then, you know, I guess we might as well just cover what's going on after that. Is, you know, of course the case breaks, the women are rescued, it all comes pouring out, the truth comes pouring out, and everybody finds out great many details that we've been discussing today about how these women were lured by this guy, where every time he would offer to give them a ride home. Somehow, I guess because he seemed like a harmless guy. It's so strange for somebody that seemingly is charismatic enough to talk people into his car and even into his house, and then that's where he kind of springs the, all right, you're my prisoner now and I'm going to beat the hell out of you story on them. But it's so strange that someone who was able to be I mean, there's plenty of people that, you know, are not even as supposedly charismatic as him, that seem to have normal relationships with, you know, people of whatever gender they're interested in, right? And not have to beat the crap out of them and keep them prisoner. This guy, when I was looking at psychological profiles, I was like, what makes someone do this? You know, like what's the reasoning? When people look at this guy, what were they thinking was going on in his head? And, you know, like, because he this part that we're showing right now, this is the statement he made at the end of the trial. So at the end of the trial, right before they sentence him, you know, there's two sets of statements. There's victim impact statements, which will often be the victims themselves, or the victims aren't alive, or, you know, the victim's parents. And then they'll also give the accused. The accused gets a chance to apologize and, you know, kind of give some reasons now that they've been, so what happened, just to be clear, he's been found guilty already, but they haven't sentenced him yet. So this is where the person is no longer in danger of implicating themselves. Presumably, if they've gotten to this point, they've been found guilty. So this is where he has a chance to kind of throw himself in the mercy of the court and give the judge, who is the one doing the sentencing, some reasons, and gives a chance to show remorse. This one, Joe Rogan that I listened to, he had a pretty interesting episode where he was talking to a defense attorney, and the defense attorney was saying that one of the biggest challenges that he as a defense attorney has with his clients is that many of these people are psychopaths or sociopaths, and it's really hard, and they have no empathy. It's really hard to explain to them, the criminals, why they need to give an apology or what they need to say that would actually be even semi-convincing for why they shouldn't, you know, just have the book thrown at them, which is what ended up happening to this guy. But yeah, so he gives this whole just disgusting. If you look in the background, you can kind of see like a bailiff. You see the guy with the uniform who's kind of half in focus. The guy kind of scowling in the background there on the right.
Oh yeah.
That guy at one point breaks into a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because this guy's just pathetic, like excuse of an excuse. So he gives this whole non-apology apology, and he says things that are outrageous. He blames it. He says that, oh well, you know, I was abused. I was touched as a child. He tries to say, but nobody really clarifies that who touched him. You know, touched, I guess, you know, like molested him. And then he tries to blame it on pornography. But frankly, there's no legal pornography in the United States that depicts the things that he did to these women. That is actually illegal, what he did. And anything depicting that.
Is
I mean?
it?
At least, yeah, you can. I mean, there's S&M, but S&M can't show.
Oh.
You can't show rape in pornography. That's illegal. So
I feel like they can do that in Japan.
Yeah. In other countries they can, but anything he would have seen in the U.S., if he was looking at something like that, he would be breaking the law. So he would be, and I mean, I think, and frankly, the internet material that would have allowed him to see that was not really that available until pretty, like well into he'd been doing his crime. So I think what we're going to discuss in a second is, besides some of this other aspects, is where he got these ideas from. But yeah, so he gives this just rambling, like just full of crap set of excuses for himself, and he is absolutely not sorry. I mean, he just you look at his face, he doesn't look like someone who's apologetic. He doesn't look like someone who's really ashamed. I think he's ashamed he got caught. He's ashamed his secret came out. But he even implies, no joke, he implies that actually most of the time the sexual contact in the household was not rape at all, but that in fact they kind of were begging it from him, and that he was forced. That he was forced to accommodate them. I mean, I was watching this today, and I was laughing. Not once again, it started like the Casey Anthony thing, where I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing at just how ludicrous and disgusting it is that, it's like one of those things where if you didn't laugh, you would cry. I mean, this guy, I think
right. This guy is.
He's just a real piece of work. I mean, he ended up getting sentenced, I think, to 1,000 years in jail, which obviously he wasn't going to sentence, but that was going to make sure he would never get out in any kind of parole or probation. I mean, I think he should have been horsewhipped to death. I mean, it's just such a. I mean, for what he's done. I mean, it's on the face of it, you could hear about what he did and not know about the parts about what he did to Michelle Knight. With the beating her into multiple essentially performing abortions through beating the crap out of somebody. What he did really legally, I think, would qualify as a form of torture and mayhem. So. Torture, obviously we all know what torture is. Torture is inflicting pain on somebody for an extended period of time while holding them captive. And then mayhem is actually like disfiguring them. I would say what he did to her reproductive system and the miscarriages that he caused probably would fall under mayhem. And you can get here in the state of California, you can get life in prison basically for mayhem. So not even killing somebody, just maiming them, like cutting off their hand or something. Or there was one case here in California where an exotic dancer set another one on fire and, burned her, just, disfigured her. And she got, I think, life in prison. So, yeah. So anyways, he gives this whole long rambling, and once again, I think the objects here, when I was looking at it, and I was like, they were like, what's this guy's deal? And they said, yeah, he's what fits the definition of a sociopath. So a sociopath fits is like a psychopath. Yes. The difference is a psychopath might not be good. I think we've all seen psychopaths like Richard Ramirez, who have shown. Oh my God!
Yeah, that guy is the devil, literally the devil.
And you look at it and you can see it coming, right? You can tell that there's something wrong with this person and that they're not good news. This guy, unfortunately, for a lot of people, you couldn't tell that he wasn't good news, especially for the women that got in the car with him.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell that there was something wrong with him. You couldn't tell that he had no empathy. You couldn't tell that he only cared about himself and his needs. And you couldn't tell that he had this cruel, mean, just monster streak in him that he would want. Just think, it wasn't like he just kidnapped them and kept them prisoner. No, he did things to them. He did things to them far beyond just satisfying some kind of like sexual urges or, I did this thing and now I feel bad. I don't think he ever felt bad about anything. He just, if anything, just doubled down on his degeneracy and really put a lot of effort, far more effort than he ever put into his job, apparently, put a lot of effort into keeping them prisoner and devising ways of controlling them. So that's kind of my long rant about that. I already talked about how I like I said, I'm not too happy with his family. I'm not too happy with, we've talked about this, the way both the FBI and the local police departments handled this case. It doesn't seem like they did a super good job. They've made some efforts for sure, but I know like the father of, I think it was Amanda Berry, one of the women, the father said, well, why wasn't there an Amber Alert? And they said, oh, well, if it's a runaway.
I think it was Gina DeJeseus family.
DeJesus. Okay, yeah. It was like once, lost opportunities, and I think they've changed that law since then. But yeah, there were a lot of frustrating things, and then we talked about just how they seemed like they got so frustratingly close. They had a good description. They really knew who exactly to look at in a very small area, and somehow blew right past this guy who had like a house that looked like a fort.
While you've gave an excellent breakdown of who this guy was.
Soapboxing, yeah.
Right, I was actually building a case for everyone else on my other monitor to like get all the clips, I guess, and we can I got a few clips. So this is the first clip. Let's play it real quickly. Let's just play it real quickly.
He was the nicest guy, one of the nicest guys I ever met. I've been going there since 2001. Last week I was there last Thursday, right before this happened. Never showing his face, like he was acting like everything was fine. People talking to the media that there was nobody coming into the house. Yes, I did went to the house, and some other friends, musicians. But they were only allowed to be in the living room. Like it's just like a regular house, but a mass. Can walk here. I mean, you come on the left side. There's couches. There's upstairs. There was pans all over. It was a mess. When I was about to leave, I tried to open the door. I couldn't even, because there were so many locks in there. I mean, I said, wait a minute. I can't get out of here. Would you please help me? I even cooked in the house. Never, that takes a long time. Never hear anything. I mean, since the time that I've been coming here, since 2001, if I would have heard something on that time, they would have been out a long time ago. What do you think is going to happen to him? He should be in jail for the rest of his life.
Right, so this was some dude called Ricky. He played in the same band, I believe. He was like a good friend of Ariel Castro, and he was a regular at Castro's home since 2001, up until like the once everyone found out what actually was going on inside of his house. So he thought it was strange that the house was filled with locks and like bolted shut doors, but he was like, okay, whatever. And they would play music, and he would cook food for him and for Castro while they played music at Castro's home. So this Ricky guy, he just for 10 years he said he didn't hear anything. Well, okay, so Castro actually did have a quite smart tactic. He would play the radio really loud, and he would threaten the captives if they made any noise. After Ricky leaves, he would kill them. So he definitely played mind games with the captives. So it would definitely be very risky to make noises. But once there was noise, there at one occasion this dude Ricky heard something, and he did nothing because the Castro said, oh, it's just my dogs upstairs. So there's no information what he heard, but like, I don't know, Castro just told him that there were dogs upstairs, and yeah. So that's I feel like this Ricky dude who has been going there for a decade could probably maybe figured it out. I don't know, man. Then we have what do we have here? We have Michelle Knight's grandmother, who I'm just gonna say it right now. She made measly attempts at trying to locate Michelle. That's what I gathered. Her attempts were measly. Let's listen into what she had to say.
And 23-year-old Gina DeJeseus, who were both
there's little bears.
The Knight family carried balloons and gifts with them. When they arrived at the DeJeseus home, they were greeted by Gina's several family members.
We figured we'd come here first because the DeJeseus family said they wanted to meet my family, and we're here to support their family. We thought that maybe we could all get together as one family combined.
Even Michelle's childhood friends.
I don't know, man. She's probably not someone you want investigating your disappearance. You know, like I'm not like hire her as a private investigator anytime soon. Then we have then we have the police office. The police guys are also pretty crazy. Let's watch this clip really quickly.
Police officer, and it's Ariel Castro that he pulls over. Okay, so let's roll the videotape, and I'll tell you a bit about it as it rolls. It is a little after 8:30 p.m. It's Thursday, June 12th. It's 2008. The officer is Jim Simone, and he's on patrol, and he notices that a motorcycle whizzes past. What he sees is the license plate tilted sideways. He knows that's an old trick by some riders that they don't want the plate seen, so he pulls the rider over. It's Ariel Castro. He doesn't know it yet. He pulls him over in the gas station. Now, before you listen to the sound here, I want you to take into account, remember, Castro seems pretty nervous. The women have already been abducted, according to authorities, are being held in the home, and the young child's already been born. He knows all of this, and he's confronted by police. Take a listen.
See your driver's license. See your driver's license, please. What's wrong? First off, your plate's improperly displayed. It has to be displayed left or right, not upside down or sideways. Then the other question is why you're riding it then. Or you don't have a helmet on, you don't have a license to operate it, and you subject yourself to being arrested. Is that what you want? No, sir, I don't.
Right, so that was another thing where the police officer Jim Simone, who actually seemed like he was pretty competent just because of the fact that he essentially did, like, he at least stopped Castro, because Castro, after he had kidnapped all the victims, he was actually riding around in a bike without a helmet and like his license plate not in order. So yeah, this guy was taking a lot of chances, and yeah, he got pulled over by the police officers, but the police officers like Jim Simone let him go because I don't know, he said to Jim that he was a school bus driver and he didn't want to lose his job, and then Jim Simone was like, okay, I won't like arrest you, but just pull over, like just don't drive on your motorcycle, just push it back to your home. And actually Castro did push that bike to his home. He didn't drive it, so you know there are footage of him like pushing the bike. So that was the thing. But now to give, I just like pretty much just like shitted on like all of these people who sort of failed, and there's like a bunch of other people, like the whole neighborhood, just Cleveland in general. But then there are some people that we should give praise, and these people are especially Gina DeJeseus family members, who actually were really active and really tried to find out what happened for like a long time. So this is them talking.
And again, we want to thank you for being patient. Okay? We would like to thank everyone, especially the missing and exploiting children. John Walsh from American Most Wanted, Black on Black, Judy Martin, Lydia Espada, is Bill Soffers from...
This is, I believe, the mother or the grandmother, I'm not certain, of Gina.
I want to thank every single one of you. The list is so long, so I'm not going to mention names, but I will say thank you to the FBI's for always believing in me and being there, and the police. Commander Seltzer, I always aimed to him and always went to him, even with my granddaughters. I participated in a lot of the activities that all you know, and I'm going to repeat this. August 6th is a night out against crime. It is going to be held down at the Steel Yard. Please take your child. Get a fingerprint. Do everything that you can to protect them. Please. And another thing, if they knock on your doors, the law They knock on your door, open it. Don't be afraid. Answer their questions. That man that helped Amanda, that the courage that she had in her to do, these 3 young women are at home. Don't ignore a lead or a help.
Right, so she states similar statements all over. So yeah, nothing that distinct left in that speech. So I cut it short. But the thing is, like, she thanks the police for help, and she says that, you know, we did it. But yeah, you also have to think, like, no, you didn't really do anything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, just
you didn't really do anything. Like the it was a puzzle, and the puzzle was like, okay, I'll give you that. The puzzle was for a little bit more advanced, like, users, but still, you didn't even attempt to put the puzzle together. You know, there was a puzzle.
Yeah.
And I don't see that you actually even attempted to put the pieces together. But, like, I mean, okay, I'm not sure that I would have solved this case, you know, but maybe if I was, like, a family member of a victim who got kidnapped, man, I just feel like I'd be looking into it, like, and the sketch, and just the sketch of his sketch, and the fact that your daughter knew the guy's daughter, and he looks exactly like the man in the sketch, like just, you know, what? And you never even suspected him. That's the fact that, okay, maybe you can't get into his house and you can't legally, like, have police kick down his doors without a warrant, but, like, just, you didn't even suspect the dude, so you really didn't do anything, nor has the police. The police made a sketch. The police should have connected the dots, you know? But they didn't.
Yeah, and then meanwhile you got these 3 people whose lives were irrevocably changed, and who really have been cheated out of an entire, like, probably for someone else this would have been one of the best parts of their life, and this is what was taken from them by this monster. So this is where I feel, well, before we get into kind of the final, my final kind of question, I would like to kind of debate with you a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like
I feel cheated that he was able. So, you know, I guess that it's what we should mention is what happened was about a month into his sentence, he was being kept in a special part of the jail. Here's the interesting thing is someone like this, maybe this is the good part, good and bad, because on one hand, you would like, for as much as I despise people that do any kind of crime, I don't feel like people should get punishment they aren't sentenced in jail. So sometimes, you know, you hear about the things that happen to people in jail and people kind of snicker, go, ah, ha, ha. And I actually don't agree with that part for all my kind of hard on crime statements. Like, I think people should be sentenced to what they're sentenced. So I think that somebody in jail should be in jail, and that's their punishment. If that's the punishment we gave them, I don't think that they should be dealing with things like getting raped by another prisoner or assaulted or things like that. I think that's really a shame that goes on there, because that's not, if we're going to have that happen, then we should really just have that as actual punishments, like getting beaten to death or things like that. Like, let that be the actual punishment. Yeah. But I think that you are responsible for the safety and security of people that are in jail, and that the punishment should be the punishment we say. Okay, so that's my little preface. The interesting thing is someone I actually
agree with you. Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Right. Yeah, that sounds like the Norwegian model, you know, where they like the only thing that they get is like confinement, and not even like within the cell, but like within like an island. They live like on these beautiful islands with like internet connections, TVs, PlayStations, like, and like really good food, and they're serving life sentences, you know, like that, like in a I would say like a 4-star hotel. Not quite 5 stars in Norway, but like a 4-star hotel.
No, I say that with me, my stance is I feel like a lot more people should be killed. So, so that I say that saying that, like, if we let you live, you shouldn't be tortured. Now, like I said, this guy, I wish we had like horsewhipped him to death, but that didn't happen. So, here's the interesting thing is anybody that's part of like a famous case, and also even certain classes of prisoners, if they've done something especially offensive, something that even other prisoners would either find massively offensive. So believe it or not, even a hardened criminal that's in jail for some other crime could look at this and find that this broke a rule of society that even they think was just far beyond the norm. So even someone who may have even raped somebody or done something would look at what he did and say, oh, well, you did 1,000 rapes. You didn't just do one, you know what I mean? Even though like one rape is horrible enough, or one murder, etc. They'll look at what he did and say, well, you really you did something to people that, like, criminals can rationalize what they do any number of ways. And there's a big problem with narcissism and psychopathology going on there. But the interesting thing is, I found this out years ago because when Charles Manson was alive here in California, he was being kept in a part of the prison that's kind of a protective custody part of prison. So because he was infamous, here's the other interesting thing is, even if other prisoners, because at some point, like nobody who's in jail really remembers what Charles Manson did anymore because it happened so long ago. But because you can also get, if you're in prison for life already, you can actually get like kind of like experience points, or like basically unlock like an achievement badge, like on Steam or something. Like right. if you kill somebody famous when you're in jail, you can become like a famous prisoner. So what happened is this one time.
That makes sense. Oh my god.
Yeah. So like Charles Manson was in a protected part of this one prison with some other people who had done some either famous or infamous, or they were just like child molesters or things like that, child killers. Yeah. So what happened was, case in point, some gang member who was, had multiple life sentences anyway, so he didn't care. He was able to sneak into the secret to the somehow he got through some security flaw and was able to actually attack Charles Manson and another prisoner. And that's just like, for him, he goes, when that guy gets out of solitary again and gets back into the general population, he's like GP. A little bit of, he goes back into GP and he's like, hey, look at me, I just got my Steam attack Charles Manson badge. So like
the
someone like this
or something like that,
I got like 100 more experience points. So so like, case in point, this guy, they have to keep him, so he doesn't even get like we talked about, he doesn't even get to be, even in horrible prisons like ours or Russia or someplace like that, there's still some social contact with other prisoners, unless of course you're either in a maximum security prison or like a supermax, like that's kind of like where certain like the Unabombers in, where you don't get any social contact, like Chapo, same thing. That's what he's dealing with right now. Or when you're a special, you're just someone like him, where he's getting much more limited rights, partly to protect him, but also really to punish him because he's so bad. So after about a month of that, he gets depressed. I think he realizes that that's going to be what the rest of his life is going to be like. Whatever lie he told himself in his own narcissism about how special he was, I think he realized that he was going to be forgotten. And so he hangs himself, and there's sort of some controversy about that because he hung himself when he was supposed to be getting checked on by guards every 30 minutes, and they hadn't done that, which, we saw that with Epstein too lately, by the way. They falsified the records.
Yeah,
it's a whole other show maybe someday, but we'll see. It gets a little touchy, but so it turns out the guards falsified records. They didn't do the checks they were supposed to, so this guy had a window to hang himself. There was some dispute over whether he did it out of suicide or out of like autoerotic asphyxiation, which is, when someone does that to get their rocks off. But no, that's a whole other story too. That's like what happened to the NXS guy or David Carradine. But so this guy goes and he kills himself. So that's sort of like I said, it's frustrating to read that. On one hand, you're glad to see that the guy's dead, but you feel like he didn't really pay for, especially that it happened so soon after the end of the trial. He didn't really pay for it. He never repented for his crimes. You have some people, like I mentioned, Son of Sam. Son of Sam is totally sorry. Son of Sam supposedly has been sorry for years, and Son of Sam,
he's great,
has told. Yeah, he. By the way, Son of Sam was supposed to be up for probation and stuff. He's told them he doesn't want to get out. He doesn't. He's so, for as horrible as that guy was, that guy, in some ways, has expressed remorse for the horrible things he's done. And I know we said at the beginning of this, obviously the scale of what was done is also very different because this guy didn't. Well, he ruined 3 lives. He didn't kill them, but yeah, it is interesting to look at that. So here's this is actually a question I thought would be interesting to think about for the two of us. I gotta ask, do you think people were doing stuff like this always, and it's just only now with mass media and the internet and television networks and were there always guys like this that would kidnap women and keep them like animals in their basement and do all these things? I mean, is there anything different about now that would make that happen more often or give people the idea that they could do this? Like, I ask this because this guy isn't really that much older than me. He's about 16 years older than me. Well, at least he was before he died. And I'm like, do people get ideas like this from movies like what's it called? The one with Jodie Foster, Silence of the Lambs. Like, is it mass media? Are how much? I always have to wonder how much are things like this, because you see all the big mass shootings and things that happened after like The Matrix and after all these other movies, Columbine, things like that. Yeah. You didn't see things like that happen as much. They did happen, but not to the kind of frequency.
I would say that it's not because of the movies and all the media, I guess, that's basically now present in our daily lives. I would say that this probably has been happening for a long time, like, have you heard about the story where there was this crazy like princess or like queen in Hungary where she in her lifetime she like tormented and like killed like over 400 maids, and then once everyone found out, she basically just got locked up in her room because they couldn't really do anything because she was the queen and stuff. So I feel like if there's ability, and if you have the means to do this, and you are like Ariel Castro, you will do it. I think it's not the media. I think you could probably, people are pretty creative. They could come up with these ideas in their head without the help of the Matrix or Silent of the Lambs, because someone made the Silent of the Lambs. Someone came up with that idea before that movie was made, the directors or the writers. So what if they were crazy like Ariel? Maybe they would not be making movies, they'd be making horror movies, in real life. So I don't know, man. I feel like it's, to answer your question, I feel like it's if there's means to do these things, and if you're crazy, you will do these things regardless of any. And obviously it will depend a lot how you grow up. Maybe if you're molested as a kid, you will have those ideas, maybe. So yeah, I mean, it's tricky. It's really hard to explain it. Obviously nowadays we have a lot higher means to do these acts than, for say, back in like the medieval ages, because like you could just get a gun, hold someone at gunpoint and make them do whatever you want. So it's a lot easier these days.
Yeah, I mean, I really have to wonder. I'd look at things like this. And I mean, like I said, it's so interesting because sometimes when we think about this, it depends. Like I know when I was closer to your age, there was a lot of debate about video games, and people blamed like Doom for the Columbine stuff because they played Doom all the time. And I used to be real skeptical, but then I think the older I get, the more I look at historical patterns. Okay. I'll give you one just for sort of food for thought for both you and I, and then our audience too in the comments. A lot of times we think about it like, oh, like this is new, like it's the action movies from the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s, or it's the video games. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You got to really roll it back a little more because, I always wonder when television first came out. So before television, there was a pretty strict movie code. There was censorship. About movies. It happened because what happened was when movies first came out, people's sensibilities started getting shocked, and they decided they actually made rules. Like you couldn't have a gangster movie, for instance, where the bad guys won. They had rules like that. Oh. And those rules, those rules actually only gradually got loosened. I would say it wasn't really until probably the 60s or 70s. So that's why all the movies
suck. Oh my God. Because I'm always rooting for the bad guy, like the mafia guys. Come on, guys.
And they all, you literally even the original Scarface movie, which is
so the American government messed up the movies.
That's actually, in a way, if you ever see the movie Scarface, the Al Pacino one, of course, the remake, that's actually, it's paying homage to those old movies because it's even though you're kind of rooting for, in that movie, you're rooting for Tony till about three-fourths of the way through the movie. And then Tony, I won't do the spoiler, but Tony does something pretty near the end of the movie where you get very disgusted with him. It's the first time probably in the whole movie that you really dislike the character because he does something to one of the other very likable characters. But the whole point of that was that to make you can't like the bad guy. So that was why he did that, was to kind of adhere. It was to pay respect and homage to the old rules of the movie because that's why they did it. So that's the whole point of that. It's not, and you've seen since then that's changed. But like I would say, even before that though, in television in America, especially in America, and of course anything that happened in America got exported everywhere. On television, we had a lot of TV shows that were like westerns, and they had a lot of shooting, and you had a lot of like war, a lot of war and like violent content was on TV to push. It's titillating, it's exciting. And that's what kind of gets your attention. And the whole point of that was really just to sell products, right? Because you show commercials. Yep. And I always wonder, you saw violence, specifically in America, you saw violence shoot up like massively. Crime rates got really bad from like the 50s, specifically more like the 60s until the early 90s. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And that's a whole other episode. But I always wonder, how much of that was that you had a bunch of kids whose parents came home from the war and who had gotten jaded about killing people and violence and had beat the crap out of their kids, and that had maybe whatever happened to Ariel here. I wonder if he had some kind of, it always makes you wonder, like when that happens on a society level, when a society starts beating the hell out of their kids, and those same kids watch a lot of violence on TV, does that make them more violent? And then, but then that changed to some extent. And then people say now, it's interesting, that's a whole other argument, is whether are we really less violent now because the crime rates in some cases went down, but it was really like the homicide rates went down. But the other thing is medical technology has also gotten way better even since the 90s. So people that are getting shot and stabbed are more likely to survive now. So that's...
when you said that, the war plus the violent content on the TV, this could definitely add up to.
I mean, in the U.S. we had like a war every decade. We had World War II. Then at the end of, we weren't even out of the 40s yet. We had Korea. And then after Korea, we had Vietnam, and Vietnam went like 14 years. So Vietnam went a really long time. So yeah, that's a lot of people coming home from the war, all messed up,
PTSD and all that.
Yeah, and then I know both me and my dad have run into people who were the adult children of former special forces guys from like World War II. And both of those guys, I hope it wasn't the same guy, I don't know, but both of these guys who were the adult children of World War II special forces guys, the special forces guys used to beat the crap out of their kids for no reason. Yeah, even this one guy, no joke, this one story my dad told me from his men's group.
Yes.
This guy, his dad was on his deathbed, and he comes to come see him, and his dad, on his deathbed, his dad punches him in his chest while he's like in his last week. Yeah, just to mess with him one last time on the way out.
Okay. The war. Okay,
So
I guess the
anyway.
conclusion of all of this is the war is bad, and let's try to not go to war at least for a few more decades. That would be really fun. Man, this has been our longest episode by far. No, not by far, but like by 10 minutes at this point. So we just recently passed the 2-hour mark. Man, we are, I guess, are getting a little bit off topic. So I'm thinking, in conclusion, right? Because I'm pretty sure we're wrapping it up, right? Even like my computer screen is like, are you sure you wanna keep me awake still, or do I turn into like power saver mode? So let me just fix that up. Right. So in conclusion, what I think is the case was the most messed up case we have ever looked at. It's probably the most messed up. Well, there are some Japanese cases where this one girl was like, oh man, like captured. There are some cases. There are some cases I think we can look into in the future, but currently I feel like this is the most messed up one we've ever covered. Like, it has to be like even worse than Kaylee Anthony. I rank this at the number 1 spot right now, and I also think that everyone involved, the city, the family members, the police office, everyone involved failed the 3 victims because no one connected the dots. It was an open puzzle, and you just connect the puzzle dots and you solve this crime. Even like the dude named Ricky, he was there for a decade every week baking beans and rice. And oh my god, so I feel like everyone failed those women, and that's all I'm just gonna leave it at that. And anything you wanna put in on your end before we sign off?
Ariel Castro was scum, and so were all the people that he was associated with. I really think there was a lot of like negligent behavior here, but I guess we've said that enough. Sometime maybe we need to do the off the topic show where we just talk about anything and everything that's weird like that, just to wrap all these little loose bits into its own show. So once again, let us know what you think in the comments, especially about that last part. Love your feedback, love to hear from you. Thank you for hitting subscribe, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Right, guys, catch us on episode 44 next Saturday. For now, stay safe and peace out.